ក All right. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, everyone, and a pleasant afternoon to all. Magandang hapon po. I am Anthony Perez from the Jesuit Communications Foundation Philippines, and we welcome you to 40 years of Accompanying Refugees, a celebration of Jesuit Refugee Service's landmark 40th anniversary, featuring the special launch of a commemorative website honoring its history of service and solidarity, as well as an online exhibit dedicated to the eye-opening personal stories of refugees. Today, I have the privilege of being joined by our guests. First of all, Father Mark Raper, the first Regional Director of JRS in the Asia Pacific region and former President of JCAP. Good afternoon to you, Father Mark.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
And also, we welcome as well Mr. Louis Bacomo, Regional Director of JRS Asia Pacific, and joining him is Ms. Duangtida Saisuk, Regional Communications Officer. Good afternoon as well. Now, before we begin today's proceedings, we invite everyone to spend a few moments of silence as we place ourselves in the presence of God for a short prayer. Vietnamese boat people, and Cambodians fleeing the Khmer Rouge, JRS has worked tirelessly for the past 4 decades to alleviate the impact of persecution and displacement, advocating for refugee rights and raising public awareness on their plight. We now direct our attention to a short video to help us understand a little bit better the ministry and mission of JRS. It appears to be there's some bit of technical difficulties going into the video. So now, let's put that aside for a moment and let me introduce to you our first special guest for this afternoon. So let me introduce him again. For nearly 2 decades, Father Mark Raper has carried out exemplary work for JRS. He served as the first regional director of JRS in the Asia Pacific region from 1982 to 1989. Then, as the international director of JRS from 1990 all the way to the year 2000. We now have the honor and privilege of having the former president of Jesuit Conference of Asia Pacific himself presenting his keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Father Mark Raper.
Thank you very much. Thank you. May I tell you about 3 encounters I had with Father Pedro Arrupe, who founded the JRS. The first was in June 1980. He was preparing to launch that service. He had asserted that the Society of Jesus will benefit greatly from serving the refugees. And in that half hour that I had together with him, I challenged him on this. I said, we can't, Father, undertake a service so that it will benefit us. He responded very gently, JRS must first of all serve people in need, but those who come face to face with refugees will find in them a source of wisdom and blessing. The second meeting I had was in Manila, just days before he suffered his cerebral stroke. He came to where I was staying in Santa Ana and asked me to work with him to establish the Jesuit Refugee Service in Asia. The meeting was 5 or 10 minutes. He left for Bangkok. I don't know if it was that night or the next day, stayed in Bangkok 2 days, and then on the flight to Rome, he had his cerebral stroke. So it was only after that that I was appointed, actually by Father Paolo Dedza, who had been named by Pope John Paul II as the vicar for the society. And then for the next 20 years, all the 80s in Asia and through the 90s from a base in Rome, I was to put in the structure in place for JRS that would enable Pedro Arrupe's vision of serving, accompanying, and defending the rights of people to be effective. But structure, of course, is only the means and not the end of the service. The third meeting I had with him was a few years later. I was in Rome again, and Father Dieter Schultz, who was then the international director of JRS, brought me to the infirmary of the General Curia to meet Father Pedro Arrupe, who was imprisoned by his infirmity there in his bed. Actually, no, he was sitting in a chair, but although almost paralyzed, he understood clearly who I was and that I was from JRS. He couldn't find the words, so the infirmarian brought a pencil and paper, and Father Arrupe, with his left hand, shakily drew the map of India and then a droplet shape of the island next to it, pointing, of course, to Sri Lanka. He tapped Sri Lanka, questioning me. And I could understand he's wanting to know, what is JRS doing to help the people of Sri Lanka? where a horrific war raged, as you know, for some time. I'm sure that Father Arupe was doing the only thing in his power for the victims of that conflict, praying for them. He would be happy to know that JRS today is still responding in a practical way to his question by accompanying, serving, and defending the victims of the long-running civil wars, interethnic and ideological strife, climate disasters, and victims of the inequity that exists so markedly in today's world. When Pedro Rupe met the JRS workers in Bangkok in August 1981, it was Hiroshima Day. As you know, he was in Hiroshima when the bomb fell in 1945. He likened the refugee crisis to the explosion of that atomic bomb, because it not only created victims, but it explodes on the imagination of peoples. So JRS not only accompanies and serves the refugees and forcibly displaced persons, it speaks to that imagination. It helps people to find meaning in the suffering. When a part of the body suffers, the whole body is in trouble, as St. Paul would tell us. And now we could say that there's a place for all types of skills, all types of persons, as long as they have a heart for the people. Historians, teachers, nurses, housewives, all can find a role in responding to the needs of refugees. JRS simply networks to bring many, many human resources together. One of our early workers, Sister Virginia Hassan, who died not so long ago, outlined some of the principles of JRS that she learned working both in Asia with the Cambodian refugees primarily, and then in Africa with the Sudanese. He said, first of all, go to those situations where no one else has chosen to go. Listen to the refugees themselves to learn what they want and what they need. Seek a creative solution to what may seem to be an impossible situation. Do your best to understand the political situation, the context, while endeavoring to serve all the refugees. And she said, refugees are vulnerable until they are safely home. And giving the refugees the lead often brings us all to the heart of the matter. And finally, I'll add, I could go on and on with Sister Virginia's wise remembrances, but dream about how best to serve refugees, and in time, let those dreams that have real possibility evolve into actions. If you were to ask me what were the lasting impressions of those 20 years that I spent with the Refugee Service, of course, I would have to speak of situations like Rwanda in the weeks after the genocide of 1994, the genocide that created 2 million refugees and havoc within the country. Or a memory of reaching Sarajevo when it was still under siege from snipers and having to dash to cover. Or the Afghan camps in the northwest frontier province of Pakistan. But the lasting impressions are the people. I tell you about one of them, who I met early in my time in Thailand, in the camp of Panapnikom. An Nermyok Tan of Cambodia arrived in that camp with 2 of her 12 children. The other 10 and her husband, Pierre Chum Somchai, had all been killed by the Khmer Rouge. Somchai had written on the back of the baptismal certificates of each child a prayer and a memory about that child. And Anne still had those pages. And while in the camp and while on the journey, she'd collected another 12 children and was looking after them along with her own. She wrote, 10 of my children are dead, and my husband has been killed. But I do not hold it against anyone. I have no spite against anyone at all. Nor did my husband hate the Khmer Rouge. He didn't want to avenge himself for the evil they had done. I'm like him. If I meet the one who killed my husband, I will not hate him, for I have no hate in my heart. I have accepted to strip myself of everything. In my case, I'm not the only one to suffer. It's a whole people, a whole country that suffers as well. But one day, I am sure, Cambodia will once again know happiness. Hope will not be deceived. The JRS story is about the lives and hopes of people whom we know personally, whose faces you can see in this exhibition. This personal knowledge constantly transforms our understanding. JRS opens a door beyond transitory or shocking images into the inspiring lives of people struggling to defend their rights, to protect their families, and to give their children a future. The JRS way of walking with refugees offers fresh perspectives on world events, while highlighting compassion, understanding, and helpful paths to action. Father Arupe was right. JRS has proved to be of service to people in need, but it also continues to be a source of wisdom and blessing to everyone it places face to face with some of the world's displaced people. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Father Mark, for relaying these very touching encounters with Father Arupe and also recounting your long experiences of service for JRS. Now, Father Mark, I'd just like to ask you, well, much has changed since Father Pedro Arupe, with your assistance, founded JRS, but the mission to accompany, to serve, and advocate for refugees and displaced people remains essentially the same. But how has Father Arupe's call to bring relief to the tragedies surrounding us, how has this impacted your decades of work with JRS, and also most importantly, the way you treasure these genuine relationships with the people you serve?
You know, at that time, we were shocked that there were 8 million refugees around the world, displaced people. Today, it's closer to 80 million people who are forcibly displaced. And so the impulse, the need, the urgency. I'm living in a country, Myanmar, which is falling apart at present, chaotic, the destructive forces of stupidity, you could say. So how has it affected JRS? JRS has grown and struggled to grow, to have the structure that would, to have the body that would be a body for the spirit of Pedro Arupe, but it's still struggling and still needing to struggle to meet those needs. It's become very large and very competent and very well focused, but it's kept the same focus of serving, accompanying, and defending the rights of refugees. I would say that the lasting impact on me, if you ask that question, is simply that that formula helps me still daily to serve, to accompany, and to defend the rights. It's a work of justice, but it's also a work of pastoral care, of accompanying people. And from that accompaniment, we gain our insights.
As JRS says, Father Mark, home is where we all begin and what we all want people to find. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our short video that we shelved just a moments ago is now ready. Again, this is a good opportunity for us to learn more about the 4 decades of JRS, JRS's work of alleviating the impact of persecution and displacement, advocating for refugee rights, and raising public awareness on their plight. So we now direct our attention to our screens.
There are some crises that threaten the very existence of our humanity on this planet. One is the refugee situation. They're all the children of God and are fellow human beings in circumstances which are often unimaginable to us. From the beginning, Jesuit Refugee Service was founded to accompany, serve, and advocate for refugees worldwide. We offer food, shelter, clothing, but above all, education. There is a Jesuit Refugee Service because a great, charismatic, loving man, Father Pedro Arrupe, created it. Pedro Arrupe spent most of his active Jesuit life in Asia.
A group of Jesuits who were teaching in Hiroshima witnessed and survived the explosion.
When the bomb was dropped, he took the Jesuit novices immediately into the streets of Hiroshima to care for the victims. And then he was in Southeast Asia and saw what was happening to the Vietnamese boat people. This was after the Vietnam War. There was great internal division in Vietnam with the dominance of the Communist Party from the north. They were fleeing persecution. He was horrified and decided that the Society of Jesus had to respond in some way. So he immediately went back to Rome and began to write to the Jesuit provincials around the world to ask them for support to serve these people.
Today, the world needs are people completely devoted, unselfish, working for the others. We have a tremendous responsibility to adapt our spirituality to the real needs of today.
The mission grew in response to the humanitarian crisis, which unfortunately kept growing and has grown to an unparalleled point today. We began in Southeast Asia. Soon it was extending to southern India. We were then in northern Africa, in the Middle East, Central America. We have a reputation for going where there is a need. When Father Arrupe founded Jesuit Refugee Service, there were estimated 6 million refugees and 4 to 5 million internally displaced people. There are now 80 million. What we hope to do is not just to help, but be with people rebuilding their lives. After 40 years, we are now working in over 56 different countries and serving 800,000 refugees. They are our brothers and sisters. God is love and has created us to be loving together. You can't be a believer without caring for justice. Home is where we all begin and what we want all people to find.
All right, thank you for that. Now to discuss in greater detail the strides that JRS has made over the years, its current plans, and of course, its bright future ahead. Joining us will be Mr. Louis Bocomo, Regional Director of JRS Asia Pacific, and Ms. Duangtida Saisok, Regional Communications Officer. Now, Sir Louis, to help inform our viewers and listeners, well, among the services that JRS offers to refugees are teacher training, education, and on the aspect of their psychosocial well-being, there's counseling, there's therapy. But before all these necessary steps are carried out, what's the first and most important step that JRS does for these refugees in the entire process of placing them under your care?
Thank you, Justin. Good afternoon to everyone. I would say that the first step is really going back to the original inspiration, which is to be able to listen, to be near and close to refugees. In the humanitarian world, in the struggle to become more efficient, become more effective from our own stock of knowledge, sometimes we come in with specific templates, no, on what should be done, what could be done. And sometimes it's helpful, but sometimes it's also isolates the other important aspects of human condition, of refugee lives, refugee situation, and refugee stories that we need to listen to. So the first is really to be with, and I think JRS always emphasizes the idea of being with rather than doing for. Father Mark mentioned about from in the video mentioned from 6 million to 80 million. There's no one organization who can possibly embrace and respond to all the needs. But I think there is a very significant meaning in trying to not look at the numbers, but really looking at people where they are. So that would be my answer to that.
Definitely, it's the people behind these numbers that are in far more valuable. Now, Sir Louis, let's take things to the present context. Now, I know, among the given challenges faced by JRS is that in the Asia Pacific region alone, from country to country, there are different laws. The asylum process it varies from each place. But I also remember sharing to you in the previous questions I asked, or for that matter, you sharing to me, the challenge of how quickly the overall peace and security situation can change, how just political turmoil and armed conflict can erupt at any given moment in different locations. But faced with the current context of the COVID-19 pandemic, how is JRS handling this delicate balance, this challenge between, on one hand, you have Pope Francis saying, inviting all Catholics to open our hearts to refugees, be more inclusive. But at the same time, due to the health crisis, nations are closing borders for public health and security concerns. Nationwide lockdowns are being put in effect to curb the spread of the virus. There's restricted international travel, even cross-country travel is very much restricted. This is a huge challenge for JRS and as well as the refugees who are essentially placed into no man's land.
Thank you. It's really true, no? And this is a question that continues to face us, and we try to respond. The pandemic is still ongoing, and in many places, political tension and conflict has even gone worse, no? Especially in our region. From our experience, one is for us to be able to look at what is possible, and we have a few tools that we can use, and for example, the online in our education training, we do a lot of online. It's not the same as face to face. There are some tools that are available to us. So I think the first is really to look at what are the tools available to us and what is the most effective, not only for us, but for refugees, because in a sense, they have to participate in this process. If they have no good signal, look at that. You cannot just demand that we go online and not give support for communication and internet support, for example, which is a bit different from what we are used to do, because we just give transportation support. So I think the first is to really look at what is possible with the tools that we have. The second is to keep on, to remain with the inspiration that things will change, for example. And this has been a discussion for many of our staff here. How do we accompany people when we cannot be with them? When sometimes talking to them on screen, the mental health and psychosocial support that we are doing, it's been very difficult. But somehow I think what has continued is that there's continuous desire to connect, to be able to grow in that knowledge of the person, so that even if there is no physical and face-to-face contact, that you're able to accompany the person. So these are some of the things that we continue to to make sure that we remember. No, we are always told to be socially distant. It's quite attitudinally. I think physically we should distance ourselves because of the science about this virus. But I think socially, emotionally, affectively, we should be close and even more close than before, closer than before.
Now, Sir Louis, you brought up the value of communication. Now, Ms. Tida, a key challenge to Pope Francis's message that he left during the 2021 message for the World Day of Migrants and Refugees was he wants to build a future of justice and peace, ensure that no one is left behind. But in your realm of communications, there's this pressing negative narrative of fear, resentment towards refugees, be it the idea of crime, terrorism, unfairly associated with them. So, Ms. Tida, I'd just like to ask, how does JRS help dispel and counteract this negative narrative hurled against refugees so that we can build a wider we, as Pope Francis would like to say, ensuring that no one is left behind?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, it's very important for us. It's very difficult to to challenge what they have perceived. For the people, they have misinformation, misconception of the people who they call refugee. There are anti-refugees everywhere. But what we can do is we can bring the truth. We can promote the rights of refugees as well, because refugee rights is also human rights. What we are trying to do in this exhibition is to raise awareness, and we also promote and hope that we can echo some very important messages that was bring up by the refugees themselves, so we can see that they are also humans. They are the people that they have needs, and they should be able to exercise their rights the way that we can. So in this exhibition, that I hope that everyone at least will see refugees differently, and I believe that it could bring about some changes. Yeah,
Definitely exciting times ahead, Ms. Tida, because in just a few moments we will be having our first look at the official 40 years of Accompanying Refugees website, featuring a detailed timeline of the history of JRS, as well as an online exhibit entitled My Home, Displacement, Diaspora, and Desire. And now, as we close in on the final minute before the unveiling of the website, Ms. Tida, looking at which our audiences will see in just a few moments, the overall layout, the featured poems, letters, drawings, belongings of these refugees. Just how satisfied are you with the result of this special collaboration between JRS and Jesuit Communications, who helped with web design and the creative direction?
Yeah, thank you. It's very it's very difficult. I will say that how we collect all this information is not easy. That how we could have the in-depth interview, and how this exhibition will be supported like technically from JRS, from Jesuit Communication, and I'm really thankful for your cooperation, and I hope everyone will. I don't want to use enjoy because the content might not be.
Yes.
they are like, the point is to raise awareness. But I'm happy. I'm very happy with this exhibition. I would say that it's not easy for everyone to bring these stories out. And I hope people will spend time on this exhibition to look at what we have done, look at our journey, look at refugees' journey, listen to their stories, and think about it very deeply. Yeah.
Definitely. And we thank you as well, Ms. Tida, for the opportunity to collaborate with JRS. And with that being said, we now have our featured first look at the official website of 40 years of Accompanying Refugees. So, Sir Louis, just as our audiences are viewing the official website, what important lessons or realizations would you hope for our visitors, our audiences to learn as they look back on JRS history and witness these personal stories of the refugees?
Thank you. The exhibit has two areas. No, one section is the history of JRS, and the other are part of that is also JRS stories, also stories of refugees. The second, I would say, most important part is really this. Sida mentioned that it was quite hard to bring out, but it has to be brought out, and you will see why. For what we hope for is that if there are JRS people watching, first is to remember in gratitude. You will see that this work has been a product of many inspiring, generous people in the past. Pedro Arupe, Father Mark, and all the other many generous people that has built up JRS, and in a way we stand on their shoulders, and draw inspiration from what we have done, and for us to look at the new situation from the eyes of our times. The second is, I think for everyone, if you're not a JRS staff, if you're just someone who's interested, is to see this exhibit as a story of a people that might also tell something about your own stories. The journey of refugees is a mirror of our own journey. For example, if the refugees have tread a path of insecurity, of fear, and our role, we could ask ourselves as we look at this journey, how have we made this journey more safe for people? How we have maybe provided some relief for these people if they stop on our doorsteps. If you are a government official, maybe you can do something in relation to policy. So what we're trying to say is that these journeys of refugees, also our own journey, we are not outside ourselves. The refugees are there because of how we also regard them, how we protect them, how we welcome, and how we try to integrate them into our lives. So look at these stories as not stories of refugees, but also our stories as a society.
At the end of the day, Sir Louis, these are authentic and genuine human stories that we are witnessing. So, as audiences view the online exhibit entitled My Home, Displacement, Diaspora, and Desire, they are in fact able to witness these eye-opening journeys and struggles of several refugees. And now to give us a preview of what exactly the exhibit highlights, here is a testimonial, a poem entitled Home Rides in Backpack.
This poem highlights my own personal life as a refugee during the time when I was sleeping on the pavements, and I had no one with me, no hope to move on in the adversity of survival, but a backpack alone to hang on to. This backpack in which I carry the shots of both good and bitter memories of life. It is called Home Rides in Backpack. I carry my home in a small backpack. This is my pillow on these rough footpaths, a blanket in these cold, moist sidewalks. Its holds keep me calm. Its hug wraps me warm. In it I snell. In it I brew shots of childhood memories, memories of joy and griefs. My broken pens stand blood. The burned pages of my school books. On it are etched Baba's fingerprints, Ammi's last desperate teardrops, Hakima's gory ribbon. In it I carry the balm soil of hometown, the wistful fragrance of my apricot, walnut, and almond trees, the last silent woes of my crumbled walls, the shattered fragments of Ammi's dreams, the aromatic mists of my madmade home, the lush wetlands of our lives. It reminds me of Baba's last helpless look, sister's boiled, rushing tears, brother's final fearful hugs, and me's last worried embrace. With it, I ran across the jungle, climbed the piercing wire fenced borders, sailed on the back of the dark water in starving seas. It's a strong rope bridges my village and I, Bahmada's unforgettable memories. With it I cried when there was no shoulder to lean. With it I shared my lonesome anguishes when the hermit walls of camp confines my very existence. In it resides every beat of me, every adulthood remembrance, every youthful moment. We both survived life of captivity. It measures the length of brutal times we've spent in detention, the midnight groans, the late evening outburst sighs. It witnesses my miseries, carries their unsaid crimes, chambers my resilience, holds my young Afghani pride. This backpack honors my dignity, knows me more than the belated humans I have rarely met. But it has been a while for now. My muscles are becoming weaker. I run out of the childish stamina, unable to carry it longer. My vision glazes over, unable to hold at all times sight. My hands lose the grasp. I run out of breath. I am afraid to sing my last farewell in this cold and unfamiliar land. But when this bruised heart beats the last goodbye, these stubborn eyes shut close forever, please bury my backpack alongside me, or place it under my wounded head instead of cold bricks, so that we turn into ashes together to fertilize your harvesting mango trees as a final gift. October 23, 2017, Bogor, Indonesia.
The heartfelt poem entitled Home Rides in Backpack, one of the many refugee testimonials and similar content that you all will find at the JRS 40th anniversary website. Now, before we conclude our brief discussion for this afternoon, Father Mark, you've had the opportunity to travel to so many JRS projects around the globe, allowing you to build relationships with the people that you serve. Father Mark, just by looking at this poem or stories or letters or paintings being put up on the website, what can stories like these teach us about never forgetting the human aspect to all these seemingly large-scale issues?
It's one person. You know, sometimes we're overcome by stories of statistics and millions of people and whatever, but here we come face to face with one person. And if in our whole life we can help one person, we've done something.
Definitely, Father Mark. Thank you for that. And as our program finally draws to a close, we now give the floor to the current Jesuit Conference Asia Pacific President, Father Tony Moreno, for his message of support for JRS 40th anniversary.
First of all, my congratulations to JRS Asia Pacific for the launching of this website. You might think that this is a very trivial thing, but actually this is crucially important in our digital world. Imagine if you don't have a home. If you don't have a home, how can you be rich? If you can't be rich, how can you collaborate? Simply as that. Well, you can collaborate actually, but collaborate with your friends, with those people who know you. But in this particular age, in the context that we find ourselves in, we need to have a digital home. A home in which we can declare what we do, who we are, so that we are known by people other than our friends. So congratulations to JRS Asia Pacific, led by Mr. Louis Bacomo. Kudos to one and all. But again, another challenge for this is how to populate the website. You know, it is one thing to create a home, a digital home, and to populate it with stories, with reports that give life, with inspiring events that are documented. It is quite a task. I look at our own experience here in JCAP. It's quite a daunting task. Before, years ago, our visitors in our website, there were only about 1,000 of them, but now we are 6,000. We have 6,000 visitors, and yet we still feel that we have a long, long way to go. And this is just one platform. We need to venture into other platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and so forth. But I think a website is a good beginning, and I'd really like to say to you guys, JRS Asia Pacific, what a wonderful task you have done. Great achievement, and congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Father Tony Moreno, the current president of JCAP. And on that note, we finally mark the end of our program, 40 Years of Accompanying Refugees, a celebration of JRS landmark 40th anniversary, featuring the special launch of its commemorative website and its online exhibit entitled My Home. Again, I would like to thank our guests this afternoon, Father Mark, Sir Louis, Ms. Dongtida, for sharing their time, their knowledge, and wisdom with us. Thank you as well to the entire JESCOM team led by Father Nono Alfonso, Justin Pontino, Paulo Gonzalez, Father Jason D, who all contributed to the success of our launch and the organization of our event. And once again, this has been Anthony Perez of Jesuit Communications, thanking everyone in attendance and wishing you a great day ahead. Maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.